In this video, I wish to highlight how a separation from a long-term intimate relationship can be a positive outcome in your life, how it can actually be your happy ever after and be one of the most empowering experiences in your life. Before I begin, it is important to highlight that this does not apply to heavily abusive relationships, and if that is your case, please do seek appropriate help near you, as I am not experienced to speak to such circumstances. There is still so much stigma around living a so-called stable, long-term relationship, especially if this means divorcing. This stigma accentuates our attachment to our idea of what a relationship should be. Making the choice to leave can be one of the hardest things you might do in your life because there is so much wrapped up in our involvement with the other person. There is our love for them, our past together, our memories, our expectations and vision of what we thought our life together would be. There is our innocence and belief that things can change. There is our fear, and that's a big one because fear manifests under different facets. Fear of making the wrong decision, fear of being alone, of hurting others, of facing the unknown, fear of not being loved again, fear of being judged or excluded. Then there is also chemistry, the addiction to familiarity, whether positive or negative, that familiarity is what we know, and it feels strangely comforting, even if it can be suffocating. And that is even more true in the case of toxic relationships. Sometimes we find ourselves coming to the realization that a relationship has run its course, even if the relationship was an overall happy one. We tried our best to make it work, we did the work on ourselves, yet the more work we do, the more clarity we gain about the nature of the love which unites us to the other person. And this usually comes back to living in fear, especially if we have been in a codependent relationship where we have both been playing out our childhood wounds instead of living consciously. We were bound by trauma in many ways. And that is also not exclusive of being bound by affinity and by lots of very positive emotions and experiences. That is why it is absolutely possible to remain close to somebody we separate from in a healthy way and still consider them as our family. And that takes me to my main points. A separation, although so painful to process and grow around, can truly be a fertile ground for a more loving and abundant life. And what do I mean by that? If we can truly look at what kept us in the relationship, what limiting belief about ourselves, about what a relationship should be, caused us to maybe overstay in a relationship, and if we can commit to a process of integration, healing, and coming back to wholeness, then we can exit the relationship with a sense of completion. In that context, the relationship served as a sacred purpose and greatly contributed to our growth and that of our ex-partner. A relationship, however challenging it is, has the potential to be a sacred container, giving us the opportunity to overcome deeply rooted limiting beliefs which hold us back. And most times we're talking about limiting beliefs such as low self-worth and the need for validation. Because why would we need somebody else's love to feel valid if it's not because we are wounded and have forgotten just how perfect we all innately are? So generally speaking, you want to exit a relationship with some sense of completion, coming from understanding why you get involved in the relationship in the first place. And that means not leaving the relationship from a place of reaction as much as possible. Why? Because if unresolved, those internal dysfunctions or dilemmas, however you want to call them, will show up again in the future. And in your future relationships, you will be given another opportunity to work through them. Why else? Because as life happens for us, it also happens to teach us how to love better. So if we are breaking up with somebody who has been such an important part of our lives, we want to exercise compassion and understanding for who they are and their experience as well as ours. So a sense of completion rather than reaction is helpful. And that translates into a sense of expansion in the body rather than a sense of contraction and anger and resentment. And it's often not crystal clear in the first place. It takes being in tune with ourselves to be able to discern what feels true in our body and what doesn't. In other words, it takes decluttering our body and mind to be able to have clarity, to access our intuition and to have discernment. Now, I want to add that even though you might have understood certain things and decided to live on those conscious grounds, it doesn't always mean that you have full perspective over the situation yet. It is well possible that in the weeks, months, or years following the separations, as you grow to know yourself more and learn to adjust to the new relating with your ex-partner, you will understand more about the nature of the dynamics which were at play in the relationships. And therefore, you will receive more opportunities to grow and to learn. And that's okay. And there is a lot of beauty and wisdom in things unfolding over time. So completion over reaction is another way of saying that we want to find ourselves in alignment with ourselves. Alignment meaning that we are grounded in our body, that we have been able to attune the mind and the heart to come to enough neutrality and discernment to make a conscious, reasonable, and reasoned decisions. We are in agreement with our core values and desires, always from a place of integrity. We process the situation through both our head and our heart. So we want to reach a decision which feels true in our body. Or if it doesn't feel good, certainly feels like truth to some extent, and the alternative of not making the decision and the perspective of staying in the status quo feels much harder. In my experience, completion came as I chose to engage in loving unconditionally. The more work I did on myself over the years, the more understanding I could bring towards the person in front of me, and the more I could hold space for their emotions and mine more consistently. So the nature of the love which united us gradually shifted from attachment to unconditionality. And in our case, I could sense through that with this unconditionality came a sense of completion of us as a romantic couple. And of course, the release of attachments wasn't clear-cut, and for a while I still got lost in old stories. But when I did, I no longer entertained them. I had learned to drop them. So my experience is very personal to me, and you will have your own. Any evolution must stem from our own truth and connection to heart, intuition, and body. The path of least resistance for us led us to separation, but also gave birth to the potential for a unifying unconditionality, for a fertile ground to continue being a family, just a redefined one. So if we make the decision from a place of alignment, is it then possible to commit to navigating the rest of the separations unfolding from a place of alignment? Yes, I do believe so. And that is the gift. We have an inner navigation system, an inner radar, which knows and when we are coming from a place of love and when we are not. And that is our body, our energy, and our feelings. I won't elaborate so much on this in this video, but the more we find ourselves in alignment, in a coherent space of being and thinking, the more we can feel the resonance of such state as truth, the more we can make it our state of being and weave in a new consciousness for ourselves. So far, I have spoken a lot simply to illustrate that our relationships have the purpose to support our growth, to open us to more love, and give us an opportunity to work on ourselves. I want to emphasize that I truly consider intimate relationships to be a sacred container for our development and our contribution to the world. And as much as possible, I do believe that beauty lies in doing the work to aim to stay in the relationship. And hopefully you reach the point where both individuals are self-aware, self-loving, and committed to love rather than just committed to each other, as well as committed to a greater vision for their life together. But I want to make a point for this video to serve as an illustration and reassurance that if it's not the case for you, it is okay. It is absolutely okay. We all have different walks of life, different assignments, which will pressurize us to extract only the purest essence of our expression. Now I want to talk to the idea of failure. We often hear about statistics saying that X amount of marriages fail, understated that X amounts of marriages end in divorce. And I disagree that divorce is necessarily a failure. If the learning opportunities in the union of two people have been integrated and the realization is that we have supported each other's growth, we have learned from it, and we are better people as a result of it, how is that a failure? I think that on the contrary, it is a huge leap and a huge win. Not to mention the empowerment and self-love which can potentially come from taking a conscious decision which goes against the current of what society would tell us and therefore against the confines of our own limited, conditioned mind. The failure, if there really is a need to identify one, is the failure not to see or to live in ignorance of what really was at play in the relationship. But even then, I don't think that it is always right, nor fair, to call this a failure, as relationships can make us very vulnerable. And I do believe that most people do their best with what they know, and what they know often being what they have been mirrored or made to believe. Now let's take this a little bit further and consider divorce or separation as your happy ever after. I will give context to that by sharing a little bit of my own personal experience. My husband and I, just over a year ago, decided to separate after 18 years together and 11 years of marriage. We have a beautiful daughter together whom we both love more than words can express. And I would have never imagined my life to take this turn, yet it was a common decision. I recently heard Elizabeth Gilbert say on a podcast that most women in the late 30s and 40s could write a memoir entitled "Not Exactly How I Planned It." Well, I can definitely relate to that. It has been a roller coaster of emotions, and tremendous growth came and continues to come from our separation. The vision that I will always hold for ourselves is that this is our happy ever after. And what created tension between us still sneaks in every now and then, and so that means that there are more opportunities for surrender. Yet having our daughter together really keeps me in check to ensure that I come to the relationship from a place of love and that we remain a family. And there is a deep feeling of inner abundance which comes from approaching the situation in that way. It is deeply fulfilling. It is useful to ask yourself the following questions if you find yourself in this situation. Firstly, can I still hold the container of the redefined relationship as sacred? Meaning that even if you separate, can you still stay committed to receiving the relationship as a teacher and as an opportunity to love more? Can I surrender and tap into my own heart, into what my heart wants to respond in any given situation? And if you have a child, ask yourself, can I love my ex-partner freely and trust that whoever comes into their life will benefit my child's path? And can I welcome that new person as somebody else to love and consider as family when it comes to this? It comes down to a paradigm shift of life happens for me, and every relationship is an opportunity to love more. Imagine that as an approach. Choosing abundance and welcoming more love into your life, this has the potential to become your reality as you build more appreciation for yourself and your capacity to turn inwards to find expansive solutions and responses to life events. Can you be with the hurt of a trigger or heavy emotion? Let yourself feel it in your body, transmute the hurt and pain and suffering. Essentially let go of your resistance to life by feeling it to the core of your being and ask yourself intellectually and viscerally, what would love do now? That, my friends, is probably the most healing and empowering decision you will make. It truly can shift your whole reality and happens not only in the head but also inside your body. It is a felt experience accompanied with a conscious deliberation and choice. It has the power to dissolve the veils of conditioning which have been holding you back. And the more you practice that, the more you cultivate expansion and spaciousness within, the more you not only allow life to happen for you, but also through you. So going forward, ask yourself, how can I respond to life instead of resisting it? How can I receive life through my body and trust every cell in my being to recalibrate and expand around life? That is the embodiment of love, and the reason why it always feels true in your body is because that is precisely what life is inviting us to do over and over again. To attune to the frequency of love, to be love, to soften into life and find ease. All you need is love. Yes, all you need is to reunite with the truth of who you are. L-O-V-E, love. Anything other than that you can accept as being part of your learned experience from the limited point of view of your formatted mind. In other words, from the limited point of view of the known. Whenever change happens, and it happens continuously, it is inviting us to let go of the known, which means that it's inviting us to grow. But we are never given anything that we cannot expand around. The difficulty comes from when we spend too much time and energy resisting change instead of leaning into it and getting ourselves into a new elevated state of consciousness in order to gain perspective. Gradually, as we learn to accept life, to receive life, to recalibrate around life, to connect with our body and breath, then appreciation arises for our resilience, our unlimited capacity to love, for the support that we receive from life, for all those who come in contact with us. And this appreciation leads to a nourishing inner feeling of abundance. So divorce, separation in that sense can be such a heart-opening experience. Not to mention the feeling of abundance which comes from having more of those deep relationships and more people to love in your life. Now, with a child in between, there is a whole other layer of discernment and attunement which is necessary. But most importantly, there is a need for alignment. And a lot of our attachment is also transferred to the common belief that our children are ours. Yet they are here to experience life just like we are. And what better support, example, and guide than an emotionally mature and available parent? Can we try and control the environment of our children as much as possible? No, we can't. We can't control the outer environment of our children, but the greatest disservice we do them is to be out of our tune with ourselves and therefore emotionally checked out or immature when we are in their presence. And this leads them to disconnect from themselves and therefore to be likely to live somebody else's life. Does that sound familiar? Definitely has been my experience. It is always the underlying current of our experience that matters. Is the ground solid? Are we prioritizing living in integrity and love? In no way disengaged. On the contrary, engaged in living consciously and deliberately. Our children always sense a disconnect between our words and actions, and they will flourish when we allow that emotional safety to be there for them. Not to mention that being balanced emotionally also allows for more joy and play to be expressed, as we are able to receive fully our children just like we are able to receive life. And that doesn't mean that any of this is easy, but certainly in the mid to long term, easier than the alternative of not doing it and living life in the suffocation of being in autopilot. Actually, it probably will be very hard for some time. I know for me, it feels excruciating at times when I'm away from my daughter. And the worst is when I know that she's sad about it too, that on some level she's suffering. It helps me to make sure that I use my time away from her to create something in the world that gives me purpose and that serves, and also to take care of myself so that when I'm with her, I'm fully present and emotionally attuned. I also like to write her letters and make videos for her to read and look when she grows older. That's a sort of journaling practice that I have to express our love for her. So for some parents it will be easier than for others to be separated from their child. We're all wired differently and there's no right or wrong. One could add that only thinking makes it so, and that's all the more reasons to connect with your body and remain engaged in the present moment, or else the mind will easily become fearful or anxious. Now I would like to talk about loving your ex-partner for the sake of your child too. After a separation, if you have it within you, putting your intention and energy towards choosing to love your ex-partner will only benefit your children. Your children are not here to validate you and to validate that you are right and your ex-partner wrong. Even if you're not in the place where you can feel love for your ex-partner, leave your children outside of your turmoil and portray their dad or mother in a positive manner. Are you able to do that? Or at least in a neutral manner? We are not here to make our children feel guilty or responsible for our pain. We are here to be a safe place for them to come to, a stable emotional baseline. It is heartbreaking to know that your decisions may affect your child so much, as all that you want is for them to feel safe and loved. And this truly has been the hardest dilemma of my life, and I know that it has been for my ex-husband too. But I know all too well that the emotional pain of having two parents living and happily married can be far greater than the adjustment to living a redefined configuration with two loving parents who genuinely learn to care for each other. In the words of Mirabai Starr in her book Why the Mercy, we must die to our illusion of control. Control of our emotions, control of our child's experiences, and in proportion to all your death, you will be blessed with endless resurrections. You will rise radiant from the flames of what you thought was the end of the world, and your child will rise luminous from the ashes of your errors. And in this quote, the word errors is relative, of course, to us living in this relative reality without taking a greater vantage point and seeing that there is no error. There is only learning and growth. I want to add another outlook on how separation might benefit a child, which also greatly supported me on my journey. A child from a separated family has the potential to assert him or herself more in hers or his individuality as they experience and benefit from the contrast of having two visions of life through their separated parents. Yes, I can see that being possible, and I love that, and it helps me stay in trust. So how do we know that we have healed fully from a relationship? I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question, but I can surely say that when we are able to drop not only our attachment to the relationship, but to the story that we tell ourselves about it as an aftershock of the separation, when there is no more emotional charge to the story, then we have probably integrated this life experience as wisdom. And I think that is a crucial step to integrate before diving into the next relationship. Unless in the new relationship there is awareness of what still needs to be worked on and space can be given for this to be healed and for more fragments of us to be pieced back together. If you are going through a divorce or separation, I feel you. I know you struggle and you are not alone. And if you have listened to this, it is simply a testament to the intent in you which wants to transcend all limiting ways of being. Please know that you are not alone on your journey, and your journey is embedded with purpose and power and beauty if you are willing to let your conscious truth guide you, and also simply to choose to see it that way. It is useful and important to know that even if you have made a carefully reflected choice to separate, the process of stepping in your new life and standing on your own 2 feet might still be just that, a process. The fear that held you from taking the decision in the first place might still reverberate for a little while, even after making a conscious decision to part ways. When fear creeps in again, hold on to the fragments of feeling of truth in your body and trust your path. Stay open to the love that holds and surrounds you and that is within you. We are here to love and be love. You living in truth and integrity is an expression of that love. Thank you for listening. I would love to know about your experience, so do take time to share in the comments below if you feel the call or if something resonated in particular. Namaste.